Welcome, everybody, to the final interview in the Self-Led Leadership interview series. And throughout this interview series, I've been exploring the question of how well do we really know ourselves as we build meaningful, successful lives, and what does it cost us when we don't? And in these conversations, we've explored reinvention, self-trust, intuition, visibility, and the moments where we realize we've drifted away from ourselves and then what it takes to begin to return. So today's conversation feels like a very natural place to close this season of interviews because it brings us into I think, a deeper layer of that return. Today, I am joined by Maribeth Swan. She's an intuitive counsel, a flower essence guide, and educator whose work centers on healing and nervous system support and reconnecting, helping us to reconnect with our deeper essence. Maribeth brings a unique blend of lived experience, intuitive awareness, and trauma-informed care, supporting people through grief, through loss, and emotional healing. And what stands out for me in her work is the emphasis on gentleness, on creating space for people to reconnect with themselves in a way that feels grounded, supported, and deeply human. So I'm really looking forward to exploring what it means to return to ourselves in that way with Maribeth. So Maribeth, thank you so much for being here with me today and for agreeing to do this interview. Thank you.
I am honored, Linda. As I was saying earlier, I've watched some of your other interviews, and it's an esteemed group of women to be included. And thank you for the invitation.
Oh, you're very welcome. So let's jump right in. And, you describe yourself as someone with heightened sensitivity. So when did you first become aware of that in your life?
Great question. I really think as soon as I had an awareness of nature, I was blessed to grow up on Cape Cod,
Mm.
and the tides and the seasons which we go through in New England. And I always was very expressive. And I remember as soon as I learned to write, I asked my mom for a diary. I wanted to write down my thoughts, and I wanted it to have a lock on it. I wanted it to be private. So um, then I had twin brothers that were born when I was not yet 3 years old. And my mother would have one baby and I would have the other baby, and tuning into what they needed, what kind of cry that they had, if they needed to be changed or fed, or just cheered up. And so that's, I think, how it began, through nature and through a little bit through conditioning.
Wow. And so growing up, did that sensitivity, did it feel like something you understood, or was it something that you felt you had to navigate on your own? Did other people understand it, or did you have to sort of figure it out for yourself?
I think the latter. I think I didn't realize that I was more sensitive necessarily than other people, but I definitely felt a little isolated, um, and always used writing as a tool to communicate that deeper sense of my observations and how I felt, as a place to
Mm.
hold it.
I love that you use that writing, and you instinctively knew that that was important for you early on. How did this sensitivity shape your relationship with yourself early on? And I ask because many people, myself included, I was so made to feel that there was something wrong with me. So it led to chronic self-doubt. So I just wonder what that led to for you.
I remember being told that I was oversensitive or I was too sensitive. I Was there a judgment about it? I'm sure that there was. I am a Leo, so I'm fairly courageous, even if on the inside I might feel doubtful and insecure. I won't necessarily show that on the outside. Um, and I think through my friendships and relationships that I had, where I was able to express the sensitivity, I felt where I could feel seen is where I more and more came home to myself. But it's really been a lifelong journey of increasing sensitivity.
Yes, I very much understand that. Now, you have had a wide range of life and professional experiences from nonprofits, education, music, hospice work. And I just wonder, what did those different roles teach you about people, but also about yourself?
Great question. Well, in being an educator, I was in elementary schools, and kids just they don't really have a shield yet, so their feelings are all over them, and not being hidden. And I remember admiring how forthcoming and just how honest they were without even knowing it. Um, but through music, I was in a gigging band for a long time, needing to work with other musicians and how everyone has to play on a team. I was also an athlete. Um, through, I would say, one of the deepest ways that that role grew for me was I lost a brother when I was 28 years old. And after he left, I felt this connectedness to everything natural, to the ocean, to the wind, to the light, to the flowers, to animals. And so that opened up this relationship just to nature alone as this teacher, and as this place where I could take this sensitivity. And then through hospice, sitting with clients who were preparing to transition, and also sometimes sitting with their family members, was another window into the fragility of life, and also the tenderness of sensitivity, and the sacred journey of it all, and just so deeply honored to be part of someone's journey in that way.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's so beautiful, and really, as a highly sensitive person, is the perfect person to have that role. To really be in tune with someone as they are coming to the end of their life. What a gift that is for them, but also for you, I would imagine. Now, as
Oh, I
highly
loved
sensitive, yeah. Well, as highly sensitive people, we often take on the energy and emotions of other people. I was just wondering, were there moments in your life where you felt maybe disconnected from yourself because of that, or perhaps overwhelmed with what you were carrying, the energy of what you were carrying?
I think I would take on other people's energy and not even be aware of it. Um, I think that came afterwards. I think I had shared with you that I was in a pretty serious accident in 2018, and became disabled in my spine and my pelvis. And what I went through with that, there was a court case involved because it happened at work, and with lawyers and judges and doctors, and this heightened sensitivity because of the pain level in my body, but also the way that I was being cared for, and what I would take on, what a doctor would tell me, and how that wouldn't resonate with my lived experience in my body. And it became really evident to me that the person who knew me the best was me. And and then I started really building such a deep awareness of what was mine and what was other people's.
Interesting. So, as you were navigating your own trauma, I guess what did that journey teach you about healing and about yourself?
Everything. I mean, I had never gotten a second opinion from
Mm,
a doctor before in my life. And it just this inherent, oh, you just trust whatever the person who knows more than you do says to you. And so I was prescribed a lot of medications and I had some digestive issues and I had to go off of all of them. And I started working with someone who was more in the homeopathic realm and started working with all botanicals. And then I started having dreams about flowers. And that's how I started working with the essences in a more direct way. Um, so am I answering the question?
yes, you're answering the question beautifully. But I think what you're sharing is, you know, a great example of how it's through trauma and through those difficult experiences that we start to open it up. And if we're open to it, start to learn more about who we are. And that's when these, you know, what's right for us starts to come through to us because we gain more clarity about who we are. That's what I think you're describing very well there. Um, when
The
it comes,
clarity, and I'll say also, sorry to interrupt you,
yes, no, go ahead.
the trust,
Yes.
trusting our body, trusting our inner knowing, trusting our emotions, trusting our sensitivity as something that's empowering, that's something that's a superpower and not something that's a detriment, which
Mm,
I think I perhaps saw it as beforehand.
yes. Yes. You start to see the gift in it rather than the challenge, just focusing on the challenges of it. Yeah, that's been certainly been true for me as well. And you know, there are so many gifts to it. And when you start to open yourself up and start to experience those, that's when you can truly start to trust yourself and be yourself, I think. So when it comes to emotional healing, what do you think people misunderstand about that?
Well, I think it's different for everyone. As someone who experienced a great loss at a young age, I was 28 when my brother crossed. Um, this idea that time heals all wounds when you're grieving the loss of a person, and that may be also through a divorce, is another kind of death, but or a chronic illness can also be another kind of death where things are not the same as they were before. That time doesn't necessarily heal all wounds. And I was told that so many times after my brother passed. And my belief system now is that the wound doesn't go away. The wound is the wound and it stays the same, and that we grow around it, hopefully in healthy ways. And so our capacity for healing, for growth, for and our intuitive nature increases over time if we are honoring our journey with that and not trying to shut it down, because that's also really also kind of an American philosophy, you know, from the Puritans, from the Mayflower, of not expressing grief. If you keep that to yourself, you're not going to cry. And we were misled. I think that the expression of grief and in villages, I mean, I've done so much research. Malidoma Some, I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he is a Nigerian shaman. And in his village, if you didn't come into the village and cry when someone passed, you were excommunicated from the village. And when it came time for the ceremony, everybody from the village would be there. Everyone needed to cry and wail and bang on drums and play their instruments. And the more noise that the village created was the more power that the soul was sent up into heaven. And it was just, for me, reading that was this beautiful connection to expression and to honoring the grief.
Oh wow, that is so beautifully expressed. And I think it's so true because, you know, you've got to let whatever the emotion is, if it's anger, if it's sadness, if it's grief, you've got to let it out. You've got to acknowledge that it's there. When we try to push it down or pretend it's not there or think we shouldn't be feeling it, that's when it starts to build. It doesn't go anywhere. It just starts to build and then starts to impact us in many, many ways. And so on our nervous systems, how do you think the nervous system plays a role in our ability to feel safe to be ourselves? Because I find that's a big issue for many highly sensitive people.
Yes. Well, our nervous system, I feel like our nervous system is the conductor
Mhm.
of body, mind, and spirit. It's our electrical system, right? We're bioenergetics because we were on the earth as the grounding, and then the sun as the light. And so between those two, we're the current that's connecting them. And to navigate that within ourselves, attending to the nervous system's needs as far as nutrition, as far as water, as far as light, as far as exercise, as far as connecting with your community, sharing things with your friends, with your family. They all play a role in the health of the nervous system.
Mm. Which plays a role in the health of everything,
Of your work, of everything, of how do you
Mm.
ground it to
Yes,
be able to
yeah,
function and perform in wherever is your professional arena.
yeah. Yes, that's so true. And so for those who may not be familiar with flower essences, how would you describe them just in a simple way?
Well, first I just say magical.
Yeah.
They are Flower essences are a bioenergetic infusion usurped through sunlight or moonlight into the consciousness of water. And the water is imprinted with the bioenergetic of the plant. And with that, you create a mother essence. And much like homeopathy, you dilute it down to a stock essence and then to a dosage essence. And it is medicine for your nervous system. And it is the most gentle kind of medicine because there are no contraindications, there are no side effects, and you can take them as much as you need to, and they will not harm you.
Yeah, they are magical. I know. I mean, I'm using them now because I've had a consultation with you. But I was blessed to have a naturopathic vet who used them for my animals, and they truly were miraculous. My animals always did really, really well with flower essences. So I know you said you sort of dreamt about flowers. You sort of had visions of them. How did you put all that together? What drew you to this work specifically?
Great question. Well, a friend of mine started an herbal festival called Herbstock in about 14 years ago. And I didn't know very much about plant medicine at all. And so I was going and starting to take classes. And then I started a more concentrated course of education in North American herbalism, and then was just fascinated. And then I studied South American herbalism. There's a lot of anti-cancer plants in South America from the Amazon. And that friend had gone to a conference where she had received a Bach set. And some people who maybe have heard of flower essences, Edward Bach founded Bach flower essences in the 1800s. And so she would have me draw a card, and she would make an essence for me with a card that I had drawn. And I would journey with these flowers for a month or so and keep a journal. And it was very subtle. If I hadn't been keeping a journal with it, I don't know that I would have noticed any shift. And then I went through a really challenging heartbreak, and she made me a very specific essence of hawthorn and rose, which are both also physical herbs for the heart. And I could feel that immediately as soon as I took it. And I carried the bottle around with me like it was my blanket in my purse. And And then I didn't take them for a while. And after this accident, when I had to go off of the pharmaceutical pain medicine, I had a dream about this flower, borage. And borage's vibrational message is courage. And she comes out in a star, her petals form a star, the leaves behind it form another star. And I started having dreams about flowers and taking the flowers to support my nervous system, because I found myself getting mean with the amount of pain that I was in and lashing out at people who were being really kind and supportive of me. And that wasn't cool. So I needed to figure out another way. And then I decided, you know what? I want to grow my own flowers from seed and make my own flower essences. And that started in 2019. And then I started making up blends for myself and then for some of my other practitioners. And one of the practitioners said to me that she had someone who wanted my phone number for a flower essence consult. And so it began really organically, for which I am incredibly blessed, because I would have never, ever come to this work. I mean, I'm a big believer now in the philosophy of everything is happening for me and not to me. And so once I could embrace that and notice, my life was very fast paced before this accident. I was always on the go. And when you start cluing into nature, she moves slowly. And you come to appreciate the rain, the sun, the wind, how all of those play a part in the capacity for us to have our food pollinated and our existence, and the trees producing oxygen, and they take in the CO2 that we breathe out, and just the integration and the interdependence of the whole picture.
Oh, I love that. And, because we are so focused on, got to fix things quickly, got to do things quickly, always in action, constantly doing. And if something's not working, we've got to do more. And, the universe will find a way to slow us down, to stop that and to put us on the right path, which sounds like it absolutely did for you. And, what I love about the flower essences is, and especially how you work with them, is how individual it is, how you really tune into what the person needs, rather than just, oh, you're experiencing this, here, take that, Yeah, it's very personalized. And what kind of shifts have you seen? I'm sure you've seen many, but in people when they begin this kind of support?
So many different kinds of shifts. The first one that comes up is how, when someone does their own healing, how it affects everyone who is in their constellation. Maybe their children, their parents, their friends. People tend to notice a shift, depending on what they're working on. But if people have some really deep trauma, when you start healing that, there are other things that come up to be healed. But you become in a more reverent relationship to yourself. Because the flowers, just like anything in nature, it's my belief system that we're all part of the one, right? Everything that's on earth is part of one system. And so when you're meeting another person, you're meeting another aspect of yourself. And that is the same for every plant and every tree and every flower. And so when you integrate that more deeply within yourself, you're becoming a deeper sense of your own true essence. And so as you become more sovereign in your own relationship to yourself, it's like a ripple effect vibrationally, and it will infiltrate your other relationships.
Yes, most definitely. That really, it is all about reconnecting with ourselves, isn't it? Because we do so often move away from ourselves. Why? I know this is a big question. I'm not expecting you to have all the answers, but just your opinion. And why do you think so many of us drift away from ourselves in the first place? Have you ever any thoughts on that?
Well, I think it has to do with how closely you're raised to the earth and how you're parented.
Mm.
I was really lucky. I had a grandmother who was 100% Italian, and she always had a garden, as did my dad. And so I grew up weeding and more weeding than planting. But I also was blessed to grow up in this gorgeous place. This is Brewster, Mass behind me, but I was raised in Sandwich, and being so close to the ocean, I remember, looking out and you can't see the end, and her tides seemed to me like she was breathing as the ocean would come in and out. And so I felt very connected to nature. And I think for some people who grow up in the city, um, that can be more challenging to really feel connected to nature unless you're devotedly going to a park or maybe you have a garden plot. But I think that's where we get separated from earth medicine and all the different ways that can take effect. But having having childcare, who people who are raising you who are tuned into your emotions. And I think that is something that's a little newer on the scene, and allowing kids to have their feelings is another point of growth as we watch humanity hopefully expand in positive ways.
Yeah, I think you're so right about being connected with nature. I was due to have a phone call with a friend yesterday, and she sent me a text message to say, I'm sorry, I'm not going to make it to the call. So about to buy a house, and there were some challenges, financial challenges. She said it's all sorted out now. She said, but I need to go out for a walk. And I said to her, that's the best thing you could do. I'm so glad you're doing that, because she just needed to reset. And there's nothing better than being out in nature to do that.
Agreed. And I will tell all my clients that they need to try to take a walk every day. And I ask that they not have in their earbuds or their AirPods, and to really just listen to nature and pay attention to the sound of the birds or the wind or where the light is moving from or the shadows or the sun or the clouds, but just tuning into that is medicinal in and of itself. The other thing I'll say is where I think we've gotten away from this knowingness is this lack of ritual in our lives. Because when we were tribal communities, there were rituals around planting, there was rituals around harvesting, there were rituals around the moon, around the sun. And something that's also been really informative of my journey in 2007, I was asked to join a circle of women that was meeting to celebrate equinoxes and solstices and full moons and new moons, and using ceremony and the earth's cyclic solstice, sun and moon celebrations to gather and share and honor and release. If that was either through burning something with a fire, if we would meditate onto, let's say, an apple and bury it in the ground. But these rituals of acknowledging and releasing. And I think we've gotten too far away from that.
And I think you're absolutely right. And thank you for bringing that up. I think that's a really good thing to explore and to sit with. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. We have got away from that. So since this sort of whole series is about self-led leadership, I just wanted to ask you the question, what does it mean for you to lead yourself?
That's a great question. Because I studied and researched a lot of different flower essence practitioners in my journey, and distilled a little bit from everyone to feel what was aligned for me and how I felt I could best serve my clients. And it was truly through trial and error in figuring out what worked the best, but also I feel like I've partnered with Earth. And so to honor that connection is to try to lead with the deepest truth and forthcoming honesty and reverence for the journey that someone else is coming to me to support, and to help align them more deeply with themselves, more deeply with nature, with the flowers that they end up imbibing. So I think it feels to me as though Mother Earth is leading me, and Father Sky as well. And so if I tentatively and diligently follow their messages, and be a devoted listener, I think compassionate listening is such a journey of truth and trust and discovery. And as you know, I conduct my appointments on the phone. I believe our voice is our truest essence. Some people believe our handwriting is. But so that everyone can just go within to share what is on their heart.
That's beautiful. And so really it's about being attuned, being tuned in to nature. This has been a wonderful conversation. Would you share how people can learn more about you and what you do and get in touch with you, please?
Absolutely. Thank you for that question. My name is Maribeth Swan. My business is Swan Essence, and that's www.swanessence.com. I have free discovery calls, and I also have a new moon newsletter that goes out every month where I will talk about what's going on with the new moon astrologically, where it is, and a few plants that have my attention at the moment, and some quotations, and perhaps a recipe, some hints about other practitioners that people may feel inspired by. So that is a free service. And then my professional services are as an intuitive counselor or as a flower essence guide. And with a flower essence session, we have an intuitive session, and different flowers will come to me while I'm on the phone with you. And then after we have our session, which I'll ask you a lot of questions, I'll do a meditation on you, use kinesiology to test which flowers will best serve you at this time. And then I alchemize an essence that sits in a crystal grid and waits to be ready. And it will tell me through kinesiology when it's ready to be sent to you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Well, Maribeth, thank you so much for the depth, the groundedness, and the gentleness, really, that you've brought to this conversation. And as I reflect on the whole series, what stands out is how often success asks us to override ourselves, and how powerful it is when we begin to return back to who we really are. And, conversations like this are exactly why I created this series, to explore what lives beneath that success, and to remember that self-trust is something we can come back to again and again. Thank you so much for being part of this. This was the perfect way to end the series, and I really appreciate you being here with me.
Thank you, Linda. I so appreciate the invitation and the connection.